Welcome to our webinar, Reforming Energy Efficiency Programs to Increase Heat Pump Adoption, hosted by RMI. Thank you for joining us to talk about this important topic. My name is Russell Unger, and I'm a principal on the Carbon-Free Buildings team, where I primarily focus on how to affordably decarbonize U.S. single-family homes. During the webinar, please feel free to drop any questions that you have into the Q&A function on your screen, and we'll get to as many as we can during a live Q&A. For those of you viewing this as a recording, please reach out to our team if you have any questions. Contact information is on the thank you slide at the end of the webinar. Let's turn over to the agenda here. So here's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to begin with a quiz for you and some speaker introductions. Next, we'll have about a 10-minute presentation on our recent report on reforming incentive programs. Then we'll shift to a 25-minute discussion with our panelists before I open the floor to 20-minute Q&A from you. So let's start off with a couple quizzes to test your knowledge. Okay, so our first question here. We know that IRA allocated a total of $8.8 billion for home energy rebates. What do you think is the total amount spent each year by states and utilities on energy efficiency incentives? Let's give this a couple minutes. All right, let's look at what the results show. So the answer here is C. Many people think the IRA is big, and it is, but states and utilities are spending this amount each year. This is where the real money is. Let's go to our next quiz. All right. During our research into incentives in various states, we saw a lot of differences in programs. Which is the highest number of different heat pump programs we saw in a single state? All right, let's look what the answer is. The answer is D. One state we looked at had 123 different programs. Now, we're not going to name names, but upper Midwestern state, you know who you are. Call us. You really need some help. Okay, with that, let's turn over to meet our speakers. So Lacey Tan is a manager on the Carbon-Free Buildings team with me, working primarily on policy transformation with a focus on single-family homes. Sarah Moscatello is the owner and general manager of the Heat Pump Store with operations in Oregon and Colorado. They focus exclusively on ductless heat pumps and have done 17,000 installations in their 14 years of operation. Michael Stoddard is the executive director of Efficiency Maine, which is the administrator of programs that promote energy efficiency, alternative energy, and carbon savings in Maine. Efficiency Maine is often held as an example for its effective programs. He also serves on the Maine Climate Council and sits on Maine's Technical Building Codes and Standards Board. Maggie Molina is executive director of the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships. Among his many claims to fame, NEEP brings us the Cold Climate Air Source Heat Pump List, which is referenced by many incentive programs. Previously, she led the state and local climate and energy program at the US EPA and served as policy director for the American Council for an Energy Efficiency Economy. Finally, Kevin DeMaster is Senior Business Development Manager for LG Electronics, specializing in utilities and electrification initiatives. He has more than 2 decades of experience with heat pump technology and other electrification products. And now I'll turn it over to Lacey for a presentation on our recent report.
Thanks, Russell. Hi, everyone. So incentives, they have an enormous potential for impact. They're a tool that have been used for decades to encourage, energy efficient adoption of energy efficient technologies. They can spur the change cycle by encouraging early adopters and leading to mainstream adoption. They can even close the upfront cost gap, particularly for low income and moderate income households. And they can lure weary contractors to more efficient equipment. So why the focus on utility and state incentives for energy efficiency upgrades? Because there's a lot of funding at stake. As Russell in our quiz earlier showed you, we have roughly 9 billion annually is going towards these programs. And while we know the demand is there, only about 3% of households in the US on average take advantage of them. So why is this? Well, most incentive programs are complex, and some program requirements are necessary to meet specific goals as well as to protect consumers, but excessively complex programs often deter participation. The impact is especially pronounced for those low-income families who are often less time to deal with this complexity, making them less likely to take advantage of these opportunities, and it just adds to the confusion. So one major heat pump manufacturer described navigating a typical incentive program as truly painful. So the key problems for consumers: market confusion. What equipment qualifies? What do the installations qualify? What must be reported? How much money is available? For how long? There's a lot of administrative burden pushed down onto consumers, lots of reporting, navigating multiple websites, delays in payments and processing. And we still see some the wrong types of incentives. There's still programs offering in mail-in rebates, which have been shown to have no effect on consumer behavior or encouraging adoption of efficient technologies. When we turn to the industry, there's also a lot of issues with consistency. There's numerous programs across the state, all with different applications, different requirements, different tools. The excessive amount of paperwork, particularly put on the workforce. There's too many forms to fill out, repetitive information being asked multiple times, lengthy applications, and those can vary across a region, making it really difficult to stack and braid incentives. We also heard that predictability is a big one for the industry. The program's length is either cut too short, or it's unclear how much funding is remaining, or it just really makes it hard for business planning, right? And programs end abruptly due to this poor long-term planning. And we know there's a better way. And so what we're proposing is a suite of options to reduce the complexity and incentive programs to unlock benefits for all market participants. And with that in mind, we created these two resources, a best practice guide, which is organized by our 4 desired outcomes: make programs simple, make programs durable, make programs work for the market, and make programs equitable. Additionally, we developed a legislation options package, which was developed in partnership with the Regulatory Assistance Project, also known as RAP, which contains 4 options for deploying best practices and incentive programs. And these options apply not just to heat pumps, but to all types of energy efficiency programs. And so before we meet and talk with our panelists for some robust Q&A, I'm just going to quickly summarize these 2 resources. There's a lot of text here, so I'm not going to read it, but this table is generally an overview of our best practices, which I mentioned earlier is organized by a desired outcome: simplicity, durability, syncing with the local market, and improved equity. While the guide outlines principles, applicable to all residential energy efficiency programs, we're really focused on the implementation of heat pumps and how to reform these heat pump programs. Additionally, within this report, we offer 4 strategies that are aligned with the desired outcome, and we sort of provide a time frame from short, mid, to long to aid with planning, as well as we rank their impact based on low, mid, to high. And just to pull out a couple examples that we've seen recently, like in California, the California Tech Program, they just launched a new income eligibility tool, Eligibility Express, which gives single-family customers and contractors quicker access to the information they need to demonstrate that a customer's income qualifies for, income qualified rebates. Another stellar example is robust financing options. That's one area we've been talking about, and RMI actually has another resource available online. Michigan Saves is a really good example of a statewide nonprofit green bank providing accessible financing solutions paired with extensive contractor network resources for workforce development. This is the other resource we have, which is our legislation approach, and we developed model legislations for 4 potential approaches to improve incentive programs. As an example, Illinois is in the process of passing a navigator bill, which will greatly simplify how customers are able to access program offerings and streamline applications and technical assistance for a variety of services across programs. An energy efficiency authority is the structure that Efficiency Maine follows, which we happen to have as a panelist here today. And our legislation would enable a state to enact a similar authority in their state. The overarching intent is to provide an alternative to the program's oversight by a public utilities commissions or governor office that maybe isn't working well. This third option is sort of an alternate to the second. An oversight council would follow a model used by energy code councils within a state, where balanced representation of industry actors manage to advance, decarbonization while being conscious of the impact on cost and industry. And as I mentioned, these 2 examples, an authority and an oversight council, are somewhat alternatives to one another. We've seen successful examples of each, but we believe that the choice between them should be, dependent on the state and what the issues they're trying to resolve. States that already have built up administrators may prefer to just add an oversight council, right? When those with less infrastructure might want to start a new authority. And then lastly, we sort of propose an implementation task force to align existing programs. This is primarily for states that require substantial modification and alignment of existing programs, such as the state with 123 incentive programs, or those that see a need for program expansion before, maybe implementing something like a one-stop shop and a universal application. So if there's few things we could just have you remember and take away from this is that many states are working on one-stop shops, something we actively are supporting and think is a great first step. But we need to recognize that that one-stop shop is just, a step on our reform journey. And we hope that that journey would end at a single universal application that is, leveraging as much data and information across all programs in the state and, is auto-populated with data as much as possible. Secondly, less is more. Keep it simple and aligned with the primary objectives. I mean, programs should be statewide and not changed because maybe you happen to have a different utility than your neighbor and on the other side of the street. And lastly, programs will deliver what they're evaluated on. And we don't see a lot of programs that are measured for their usability by customers or contractors and installers, or really on the quality of installs and the overall experience from the consumer. And we hope to change that. And through these efforts, we can improve the delivery of incentive programs, which has many benefits as we've illustrated here. And we can reach more people, increase jobs, new providers, and install more heat pumps, and hopefully shift funds away from administrative spending towards more installations. So I hope this preview of RMI's approach to the best practices in reforming incentive programs has sparked your interest, and that you'll navigate to our report online, which we'll share a link at the end here, and read more. So I'm going to turn it back to Russell to facilitate a stellar discussion with our panelists.
Thanks so much, Lacey. So now we'll shift over, as Lacey said, to our panel discussion. And I'll begin by asking everyone in the group to briefly respond to the same kind of initial framing question, and then we'll ask each of them a separate question. And after that, we'll turn to the promised audience Q&A. So Sarah, Michael, Maggie, and Kevin, welcome. Thank you for being here. Please say hello and share your response to our opening question. If you could change one thing about incentive programs, what might that be? And we'll start with Sarah, then Michael, Maggie, and Kevin. And I'll ask you all to keep your answers just to 1 or 2 minutes. And the rest of you should feel free to share any quick reactions. And I'll be very excited if you happen to disagree with what someone says, and maybe we can get a little controversy going. So, Sarah, let's start us off with some controversy.
Oh boy. Okay, so first of all, that is a very difficult question to answer, particularly in 1 minute's time. I think if I only can choose one, I would ask that those who are implementing these rebate programs really truly partner with the contractors that can really move the needle, so to speak, on getting rebates taken advantage of by homeowners. I think that there's a lot that we can do, that contractors can do, if we understand what your motivations are, if we can try to find where do our goals align, and helping us understand how to help you. Not very controversial, sorry.
I think, Michael, as the designated program administrator, you're supposed to disagree strongly. So,
Oh, no, I totally agree with that.
sorry. Anyone
Am
want
I
to
up?
disagree? Actually, you're not up yet.
Okay,
All right, sorry, take that back. You're up, Michael. Go, unless you want to.
okay.
Feel free to disagree. No one wants to disagree, Sarah. All right.
I'm mean. Nobody wants to disagree with me. That'd be tough.
No, we follow that in our own programs. We rank the listing of contractors by who has performed the most projects. So if you do a search for the vendors of heat pumps in your zip code, the response you will get back is listed in order of those who've conducted the most. So that would be consistent with what Sarah is recommending, I think. That way the customers know they're going to get somebody who's busy and knows what they're doing. The thing that my mind went to when you asked this question, Russell, was what the things that I am completely unable to control, because our programs, like most, are conducted at the state level, and we have no control over things happening at the national, federal, or international level. And the thing that has been really tough these last 5 years or so are supply chain disruptions. So I don't know that that's really a thing that any program manager can influence very much. I guess whether you elect to put things like BABA requirements, made in America requirements, or other kinds of restrictions, I guess that would be something in your control in some cases. But the refrigerant regulations are having a little bit of a pinch on the supply chain now. But when the pandemic hit, there was some challenges getting supply. So you want to get the marketplace all cranked up and get everyone excited and get the vendors and contractors all excited, and then there's no product. That's super challenging. So if we could keep that steady and predictable, that would be my wish.
Okay, is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of irregular supply? Okay, maybe not. Maggie, I think you're up.
We're not getting much pushback, but we'll keep it spicy, Russell. Don't worry. I'm sure something will come up. So one thing that came to mind for me with this question was actually, maybe it's a couple of things disguised as one, and that's to make sure that we're not treating these programs as overly focused on the incentive. And you can tell just in some of the language that we use, sometimes we call them incentive programs, the rebate programs. How can we make the rebate programs better? And yes, the rebates, the incentive, that matters. It's a huge component, but it's not the only aspect of market transformation. NEEP's been at this for some time, working on the heat pump market in particular for a dozen years. And one thing that we found in our first strategy report on this back 2013 was around three critical market barriers that we were finding. Lack of consumer confidence, consumer awareness, so that market failure of just basic access to good information for consumers. Second, being contractor confidence, to Sarah's point, bringing contractors in as partners, and as Michael's doing with their work in Maine, and ensuring great training programs and the skill set being there. And then the third component being, yes, bringing down those high upfront costs, that market failure, even though the benefits are there over the life of the product, that high upfront cost absolutely is one of the market barriers. So maybe cheating a little bit, it's not one thing, but I do think often the programs are designed around the rebate. Just get the rebate out there and let consumers show up. But it's much more than that. So we can get into that a little bit more. But that was what came to mind for me with that question.
Okay, thanks, Maggie. Kevin, can you round us out, please?
Well, first of all, I want to thank RMI and just pulling together this panel. This is just an initiative that I think the industry nationally needs to, start having a conversation about. This is something we saw firsthand as manufacturers, that there was a gap in understanding by programs. And so I guess, the thing that I will say about this is that in a packaged, kind of answer to your question, these programs, you hit on the highlights already. It needs to be simple, needs to be collaborative, but I think what sums that all up is a term, industry focused, right? What is the how are you going to serve the industry that's trying to drive this? And I think too often we've got TRMs or evaluators that can complicate the process. And to Sarah's point, right, she's boots on the ground trying to deliver these programs. We as manufacturers are here trying to explain programs, and it gets very complicated with all the derivatives we've seen. And by the way, I know which state you're talking about.
I know you'll keep my secret, Kevin. Okay, well, why don't we then switch? Thank you all. Let's switch to our separate questions for each panelist, and same instructions as before. Please keep your responses brief. I invite reactions and controversy. And so, Sarah, we're going to start with you again. So, what do we need to get right about incentives to actually change what homeowner decision making is and kind of spur heat pump installations? You're muted, Sarah.
Sorry about that. It goes back to me to this idea that we are in a partnership. Contractors like myself are out talking to potential heat pump owners every single day. And if we can understand the program and can help be the face of the program, I think that is helpful. I think it's important that the contractor can offer the incentive up front as an instant rebate, and then can get paid quickly for that rebate. Having a select group of exclusive contractors deliver the program, I think, is preferable to having everybody and their brother offering the program. And it may seem counterintuitive. If you want more heat pumps out there, you want everybody to be doing it. But I think having very high standards for your program and high engagement with your partners is really important. It definitely is the case that you're going to have many contractors in your area that don't see things the way that you do, and that are not going to want to offer heat pumps. They don't believe in heat pumps. They don't think it's the right answer. Why are they part of your program? I think, creating an exclusive program to where contractors can look in from the outside and say, hey, wait a minute, something's going on there. I'm seeing my competitors, I'm seeing, contractors that I really respect that are in there, offering these programs and selling these products, and I'm on the outside. I mean, we respond very well to competition. I will tell you that. I mean, if my competitor is offering something, well, I want to be able to offer it too. So I think, and then, engaging with that group of contractors so that everybody's on the same page with what is going on. I mean, the reality is for a contractor, for manufacturer, we have to sell stuff. That's what we do. We sell stuff in people's homes. And so it has to be something that makes good business sense as well. We're not able to do it just because we believe in it. There has to be more to that because we have to support our businesses while doing this. So I think, the more information we have, the better. Sorry, this is getting really long-winded. But anyways, yes, partnerships, talk to us, work with us. And I think together we can do it and we can do it well and right so that people are happy with the end result.
Thank you, Sarah, and I appreciate you have you've staked out an exclusive position. So I'm curious, any reactions should like heat pump programs be like restricted to an exclusive group of contractors? So as Sarah said, there's this motivation looking on in from the outside, hands pressed against the glass, I want to get in, or like what are other approaches that
Well,
that you all? Sarah, come on, I'm
and here's
attaching you to that exclusive position.
and
Let's-
I like that. I do think there needs to be open enrollment periods where other contractors can come in. So I want to say that, but I think it needs to be an exclusive group. It's not just you sign up and go to a 10-minute webinar, you're in, you can offer the rebate. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not providing the education. That's not providing all the other things.
Got it. Okay.
Exclusive.
Let's hear some reaction to that one. Michael, looks like you're, or Kevin.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead.
if you'll indulge me, sorry, I agreed with almost everything Sarah said, except for that whole piece about the exclusive part, because I can only say that we have had a lot of success in Maine, and we took a completely opposite approach. We have more than 500 registered contractors in the state who will just do who have signed up and have the sufficient training to do residential installs. And I think that competition really does drive them to go out and market hard and to keep their prices lower. So our prices in Maine are much lower than in the surrounding states. And I don't know what else to attribute that to other than competition. So I think maybe there's a place in the middle. I agree with Sarah that you don't want just hobbyists who don't really know what they're doing to install this equipment, because if they do so and it doesn't perform well, the customers will be unhappy. And if they're unhappy, word of mouth marketing will fall apart and people won't buy your stuff. So you don't want that. But I don't think you have to go as far as to make an exclusive group of vendors. I think that would tend to undercut market transformation.
Okay, thanks, Michael, and thanks, Sarah. I appreciate you taking out a strong position. Love it. Let's see more of this. Why don't we, now that we have, I imagine Kevin may have some thoughts to say, but why don't we move on to the next thing and we can circle back to this if we don't feel like we do justice to it. So, Michael, you put your head out there, so I'm going to ask you now your next question. So, why has Efficiency Maine been so successful as it has in getting heat pumps installed? And I don't believe it's the structure Efficiency Maine, because we see other states that have a similar kind of energy authority structure. And so our question is like, what is your secret sauce? Where do other states buy some?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that exactly, but I think partly it goes back to the conversation we were just having and the recommendations that you've made in your report. We never took our eye off the ball that the number one objective was to drive demand. And we do that with all the things other folks have mentioned. We do that with providing consumer information and tech support and lots of information on a website and calculator tools and ways that they can find contractors by searching for them on our website. But we kept it really, really simple. The metaphor I've lately been keen to use is a plain bagel. We just made the best plain bagel we could make. We made it as cheap as we can, as accessible as we can. And this stands in contrast to the everything bagel, which seems to be very fashionable in lots of programs, especially government programs. But I would encourage you, if you're at the early stage of trying to do market transformation, put aside the everything bagel. That is gonna complicate things. So no full energy audits, no prerequisites of weatherization before you do a heat pump, no excessive data collection, whether that's about income levels or wages paid or made in America, all that good stuff that we're interested in. It's interesting. It's kind of academic. It's not going to help Sarah make the sale. She's going to sell to a customer based on their demand for this thing that's going to improve the performance. It's going to improve the comfort of their home or their business. It's going to save them money. Put all your effort onto that, and then provide really sweet rebates initially or some financial incentive to make it really juicy, get people excited about it. And the heat pumps are going to sell themselves mostly because they perform so well. So you just got to get them going and get the momentum going and then kind of get out of the way. So I discourage folks from having too much complexity in their programs because it's going to turn off Sarah and all her competitors. And I think competitors is what pushes these prices down and makes this affordable and accessible.
Okay, never go to the Michael Stoddard breakfast cart, but maybe go to him for programs. I don't know, like I'll turn to Maggie, but also Maggie is someone who's seen a lot of programs. If you have any thoughts about, why Maine is so special, I know NEEP is serving as the regional convener of the New England Heat Pump Accelerator, which is a multi-state midstream heat pump program led by Connecticut in partnership with Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island. And love to hear, Maggie, from you. What is most surprising so far in the development of the accelerator?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. We're still in the early days of the New England Heat Pump Accelerator. But maybe first, Russell, you just asked in reaction to the work Michael and his team is doing in Maine. I mean, I think the focus on market transformation, that holistic package, and I was sharing earlier, it's not just about the rebates. Yes, we want to make them juicy, as Michael just said. But ultimately, it's not just about the rebate and that full supply chain focus, contractor, consumer awareness really has been, in my view, one of the many factors to Maine success. So building on that, we'd love to build on the work Maine has been doing and in other states in New England that are part of the New England Accelerator, but really facilitate that peer-to-peer sharing. So maybe first, just before I comment on what's most surprising so far, for those who aren't familiar with the Accelerator, this is a brand new initiative and it's funded through a grant from the US EPA through the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, or CPRG. You listed off the 5 states in the coalition led by Connecticut. And it's going to be a 5-year program. So I think Sarah was talking about durability and longevity. Our hope is that having that 5-year runway will support durable market transformation. It is focused on the residential heat pump market, both for space heating and water heating. And you mentioned NEEP as a convener. Just wanted to note NESCOM is another nonprofit supporting the coalition as conveners and advisors, but it's very much administered through the states. And maybe to your question about most surprising, maybe this is cheating a little. I'm cheating on my answers, but I have to say, bringing 5 states together is the first big surprise for me. I think, Sarah, you were talking about, or I forget, I'm sorry, someone was talking about the kind of contractors serving the market, or maybe Michael, you were talking about state lines, utility lines. At the end of the day, state lines really don't matter for the market that's delivering heat pumps. But of course, energy being regulated at the state level means a lot of these programs are bound to state regulations. So when we can come together across state lines, tackle problems together, have these honest conversations about what's preventing further progress, where can we reform things to the spirit of RMI's report, that's a pleasant surprise, but it doesn't happen very often. So I think that's just the first surprise. But again, we're still very early days in this initiative. There will be early this year in January, the coalition opened up an RFI process and then opened up an RFP for a regional implementer that will be taking the lead on the implementation of the accelerator. That RFP just closed, so stay tuned for more information on kind of what's next. But overall, the structure of the accelerator, it's really three components. One is a market hub that will support some of these things we've been talking about, supporting contractors, but also distributors. So that is one unique aspect. While some programs in the region do have a distributor-based approach, supporting distributors with trainings and a financial stipend, many of the programs in the region do not take that approach. So that will be the new element, a regional consistent approach to working with distributors. And I was just glancing through the Q&A and I saw a question on distributor-based programs. So jumping ahead to that, the New England Heat Pump Accelerator will do just that in support of the market. So that's the first component, incentives through the market hub through distributors. The second component is an innovation hub. These will be a series of grants, both state-based grants and then smaller kind of community-based grants to support innovative technologies, innovative approaches to reaching underserved segments of communities. And I think that's important to acknowledge that even though there's been a lot of progress in this technology, Michael was talking about, you know, the technology sells itself. They perform very well, but there are still niche markets, niche regions that are niche applications, I mean, where we do still need continued innovation. So that's the second component. And then finally, there'll be a resource hub that will bring more consistent regional data sets, data sharing of technology uptake and performance and some other aspects. So still very much early days. If we can do this again next Earth Day, I'm sure we'll have some more things that are surprising of the accelerator, but very exciting to be at the early phases of the launch.
Thanks, Maggie. Appreciate you sharing about that. Sounds really exciting. Looking forward to seeing that unfold. So I'll switch now to kind of the question for Kevin before and after this, we're going to go to our audience questions, which Maggie, appreciate you dipping in there early. So Kevin, can you share an example of an incentive program that impacted your business planning? And the reason I frame it that way is it would have to be significant enough and reliable enough that you're actually going to put it into business projections. And so is there such a program, and when was that, and what was it that made it something that you were going to literally kind of plan around?
So that's a good question. I would say I still haven't found the silver bullet. We're still waiting for, you know, that program that really hits all the marks. But the program that, you know, I want to just kind of take you on a little story here about what I think was of greatest value to me. And so I live in the state of Wisconsin. As a manufacturer working with the industry, my role is to promote every energy efficiency program in the marketplace to our distributors and to our contractors. My goal is to make these programs well known, understood, and help take them on the journey. But I think the challenging part is the complexity and the variation. So I'm going to take my home state of Wisconsin and highlight the Focus on Energy program as kind of a little bit of a journey. The one thing that I think some of your report addresses and why I picked Wisconsin was the fact that they took the initiative to actually run a statewide program, meaning it's a consistent program of all the participating utilities throughout the entire state. The rules are the same, the metrics are the same, the incentives are the same. It's easy to communicate that to the distributor partners. and to explain it to contractors. And so that's why I took I chuckled a little bit when I heard about the state with multiple different programs. So that was, so that's something near and dear to me. But the programs are only as successful as they're willing to collaborate with the industry. And for over a decade, I've been trying to encourage every implementer, every utility to say, run your ideas past me, run them past us. I will bring other manufacturers, competitors into this conversation to say, let's talk about what you're proposing. And so often, what we get is, here's the program was rolled out, and then two days after it's rolled out, I read through it and I point out all the areas they're going to get black eyes, and they're like, oh my gosh, we didn't see that, or we didn't even think about that, or this. The whole point is the manufacturers have relationships to our distributors. We get to talk with them. We get to talk with the contractors to understand their pain points and know what the industry wants. But I will say, working with the program, it took some time, right? I'd make recommendations and changes would take place. But we know how slow programs also change, right? We got maybe 60% of the way there to the recommendations I made and then the next program year, they adopted some of them, but not all of them. And so you still deal with programs that are designing these initiatives, or the program design around something they build in their own cocoon, and they think it's like other traditional programs. And the products that like Sarah sells and Michael is trying to promote, and along with Maggie in all their efforts, these are different products than just taking a furnace AC replacement in a like for like box and swapping it out. And the programs need to understand that. And they also need to give the contractors the ability to solve a comfort problem. That is the primary goal of the contractor, to make people comfortable. And so we need these programs to come alongside the contractors and distributors delivering these programs. So, and get rid of fuel switching as much as possible at the policy level.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kevin. Really appreciate that. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to switch to our audience Q&A, and what I'd like to have is I'd like to get as many in as possible. So, I'll kind of tag one of you to answer a question. If someone else feels a really burning desire to respond or kind of elaborate on that, do so. But I'd rather kind of we get through more with kind of briefer answers than fewer. So let's start with the first one. We got a question from Jamie Hoffling. I work in a county sustainability office, and I'm working on an online energy hub where residents and businesses can find information about the various incentive programs. We don't have a lot, but it's enough to be overwhelming. Are there suggestions we could share on the site to help users navigate and braid the programs? Maggie, you want to take a stab at that?
Okay. So at the county level, so yeah, I mean, this will depend, are we in a state, the one with 120 programs, or in a state with one program? So context does matter. If we're in a state, in this situation where you have a well-run statewide program that's, got their brand and very streamlined, I think that's, fairly straightforward. Trust Efficiency Maine on this, go to their site, kind of thing. If we're in a state with 120 programs, it becomes more complicated. And I mean, in general, I would back up and say, and I know this puts a lot on the contractors, but this is kind of the old truism in all of this work, whether it's a heat pump program or other appliance program, installation, is find a great contractor. And I know that's kind of cliched, but it's so important, and they do help. And that's why we've all been talking about partnerships with contractors. they are the kind of front line of navigating these, and we need to make the program simple so contractors can engage, and that the consumers aren't the ones that have to navigate all of this. So it's a bit of a non-answer, but if there's the qualified contractor list, back to the earlier conversation, I agree, having qualified contractor list programs is really important. That would be a place to send consumers.
So Maggie,
What do others think?
Michael, you can jump in.
I totally agree with the point that Maggie landed on near the end, which is it is too much for a small municipal level government office to try and know all this information. And you don't really, if you're that person, you don't really want to be giving advice on what people should be putting in their homes, one product versus another. It's a very awkward spot for a civil servant to be in. Far better, I think, to have a good referral system where you can get people over to contractors who are the pros and who are accountable for what they put into your house and what advice they give. So I think that's the far more scalable way to deal with that situation.
So again, what we're hearing from both Michael and Maggie is, okay, you're not gonna be able to make sense of it on your own. The contractors are going to keep track of like the most important like programs and help the client navigate it. And Sarah, I'm going to move on to the next question. I'm sure it's something great to say, but I want to, as I said, I want to go through these quickly, try and get to as many people have asked. Okay, so next one's for you, Sarah. So this is from Nick Haid. Often heat pumps are oversized because of various issues in program rules, contractor knowledge, and other eligibility requirements. Would more simple rebate incentive qualifications increase adoption and increase general heat pump, like for curious customers? So less complexity, have it a little simple. Maybe people's choices are going to be a little more restricted. Like where do you come down on that, Sarah?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think keeping it simple, we definitely find ourselves in this situation sometimes where, well, gosh, in order to get the rebate, we have to install X. We don't believe X is the best thing for them. We don't believe that they're going to be the most comfortable, get the most energy savings, or, various things. And so, we're put in a position where we're selling them something else instead, and maybe they're not qualifying for the rebate because it's slightly different. I think having, for us at the end of the day, our goal is to make people comfortable and happy with their selection. And so, I don't think sometimes that the programs know what exactly that's going to be. In the same way that we do when we're doing our load calcs and interviewing the customer about what they want and what they're interested in, and yada, yada, yada. So yeah, I think simplifying is good.
I love hearing a contractor talk about load calculations. Okay, next question is from Dana Fisher. And I don't know, I know Dana Fisher who works in Mitsubishi. Maybe there's many Danas out there, so this could be a ringer question. This is for you, Kevin. So, well, upstream and down, and the questioners, by the way, are not picking someone to ask. We're giving you questions. So while upstream and downstream rebates always seem like a fork in a road, wouldn't there, presumed question, wouldn't there be advantages to using multiple pathways to encourage purchase of qualifying heat pumps and to ensure that program designs don't miss opportunities? Vermont kind of veered into this hybrid approach in some parts of the state, and I wonder if it might not be advantageous in more places. Reactions to this, Kevin?
So first of all, love my good friend Dana Fisher. He's a rock star in the industry and loved all the time we had working together. And he has great insight. I think multiple pathways, without understanding exactly what this hybrid model he's referring to looks like, I'm not sure if I'm wanting to say that more is better, right? That seems like more complexity, like instead of getting, and maybe it's more options for the homeowner, for the contractor. So I'll have to pick his brain a little bit more about what he's thinking on that. But, I think, even if it's a midstream program, every program wants to put their own spin on it. So they're not universally alike. And I know that that's what sets maybe different implementers apart, and what they're trying to bring to the market, and the solution. And I want that innovation, but there's just a lot of complexity. I like the idea of trying to speed up the process, take the paperwork out of it from the customer side. As was mentioned earlier, that the customer paper rebate forms are really not having an impact. Maybe the midstream instant discount, it is a much better, more effective way if we can get distributor buy-in and support.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Okay, we're gonna keep and appreciate all your kind of tolerance. I kind of, force these answers to be a little brief. I want to get through as many as we can again. So next question from Andrew Irdos, who's asking like, what kind of are the best practices or suggestions you'd have? And this will go to Michael, when engaging with programs, engaging distributors.
Well, I guess this goes back to what Kevin was just talking about, and Dana's question as well. I think working through the distributors really has a lot of advantages, especially when a market for a particular product gets more mature. And one of the things I would note about Vermont is they have one of the most mature heat pump markets in the country. They've been doing this, for a decade, and I think their contractor community knows what they're doing. So the thing that concerns us a little bit in a very cold climate like Maine is that, to somebody else's earlier question, you really do have to get the sizing right. You don't want somebody to put in a whole home heat pump system and have it too undersized. Although oversizing is not good either. So there's this Goldilocks thing you're looking for. And so somebody on the ground in that home needs to do that. And distributor can't do that. They're not out there. They're back at the shop at the supply house. So in our programs, we're still really focused on the contractors out in the field, and they're accountable to us to do the job right, and get it sized right. So I think it depends, but our entire heat pump water heater program, by contrast, is all run through the distributors. And what we do there is we make them compete against each other. We go talk to them. We say, did you hear what these guys are offering at Lowe's for a price? Did you hear what these guys are offering at Home Depot? Did you hear what these guys at FW Web are offering? And we get them to go down to the lowest possible level. And we try to keep their reporting pretty minimal. But I think competition, keeping them in the loop about what products we're trying to move is the best thing. And we try to do things when we're going through the distributor, we want to make sure that it's something that's sort of plug and play. Like if you just put it in and it's going to work and it's going to be appropriate for each situation. And so that's why we think it's a little bit of an easier fit with water heaters than with space heaters.
Okay, thanks very much, Michael. Okay, I'm going to try and get 2 more questions in. So we're going to have 2 minutes in total for these. Let's go to one from Aaron Kempster. And I'll send this one to Sarah. And so the question is like, knowing there's no such thing as a silver bullet, what's the biggest factor that could help nudge heat pumps closer to the prices of legacy heating equipment? Is it like increasing sales volume? Is it de-risking the pricing? Is it something about supply chain shifts? I'm not saying they're necessarily going to come the same, but what's gonna help the most? So try and keep this again quick. Try and get some more questions. You're muted, Sarah.
For us, it's pretty simple math. If the equipment is more expensive, then we are going to charge more. So if it's more expensive than traditional unitary HVAC equipment, then we are going to have to charge more. So there's that piece. And then there's also, though, the piece of repetition, right? So on the labor side of things, because we only install heat pumps all day long, we're really good and efficient at installing heat pumps. And that's sort of part of my spiel too, about having this exclusive group that people can apply to be part of. It's not totally closed, but you've got a group of sort of Navy SEAL contractors that are totally focused on heat pumps. and they're out there, they're fast, they know what they're doing, they're just good, as opposed to the guy that does them every once in a while, but who's telling my customer, "Ooh, I wouldn't go heat pump. This isn't going to work for you." Even though he's part of the program, he's trying to sell the customers away from heat pumps. So
Thank you. I'm going to try to squeeze one more in. Quick thoughts. I know many of you can answer this one. The last one will be for Maggie. We have some questions about how do you get contractors to service hard to reach areas? And I imagine this might be something you're talking about in the accelerator in like 30 to 60 seconds. Any quick thoughts there?
Yeah, that I mentioned the 3 hubs of the accelerator, the second being innovation hub. And a key aspect of that is reaching underserved households. Again, through innovative technologies because of applications for multifamily homes, mobile homes, that will be a key component of that innovation hub. I don't know if others wanted to jump in on current programs, but I do think the incentives need to line up and make sure the rebates efficient. And I know we've been talking about keeping things simple, the plain bagel as opposed to the everything bagel. But I think we've gotten into some complex aspects that are borderline everything. But anyway, just really quickly, I do think efficiency matters for making sure that we're keeping costs low and doing insulation in projects where we can, and then sizing equipment appropriately to the loads. So just wanted to throw that in.
Sorry. Thank you. Sorry, we're just almost at the hour. So thank you all so much for attending the webinar today. And we're so thrilled to share this important work with you. And thank you so much to all the panelists, Maggie, Michael, Sarah, and Kevin. And for those of you in our audience who are policy makers or manage programs, evidently you joined today because this issue resonates with you. And so please reach out if we can be helpful. If you're an advocate, we need your voice to encourage programs that are designed for users. Let us know how we can help you elevate this issue in your state. I don't think you're going to find much disagreement for a conversation that begins with, we want to reduce red tape. If you're an industry, please help us to get this right so it works in the real world. And if you're a supporter or interested citizen, please spread the word, especially as programs start evolving in this direction. And we've been recording this session, and the recording will be posted on the event page, the same one you used to register for the webinar, within 24 hours, along with links to our report. The link for our event page is in the chat now for you to bookmark and return to as resources are added over the next day or so. Or you can also scan the QR code on the screen. Thank you again and have a great rest of your day.